Hello, I am Steve from monkeygoosemag.com. I am your voluntary metal correspondent. And here we have the infamous Kirk Windstein from, is it Windstein or Windstein? We have Kirk Windstein of Crowbar, of Kingdom of Sorrow, and of course of Down. On Wikipedia, it says you were born in Middlesex, England. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so like, how did you end up here?
My mom and dad were from New Orleans, but my dad was in the United States Air Force and was stationed in Middlesex. So I was born on the Air Force base there. But I was back, I think then we moved to San Antonio. I was back in New Orleans by the time I was 3, so I don't remember any of it.
Okay, so you didn't grow up really to worship the Queen or anything. It was just it wasn't really an English thing. You just have really
dual citizenship though. I'll be 51 on the 14th of April, so I'm old enough where if you were born on British soil, you were a British citizen.
Okay.
Like on I have an American passport, but of course the United Kingdom is where I was born. But so it's kind of tricky. But
okay, so if that guy wins, you could run. I mean, when you came to New Orleans, how did you come to meet guys like Phil, guys like Jimmy Bower, guys like Mike Williams, guys like Pepper, like the guys that were into Black Sabbath, the guys who were into doom metal? Like, how did you find these guys?
At shows, really. I mean, I've probably known Phil. Phil sang in a few bands, like Robin was telling you, she went to high school with him. I probably met Phil, he was probably like 14 or 15, I was 17, 18 maybe, but I'm 3 years older than him. But, we met basically at shows. Like, I met Jimmy Bower. He was in a band, Shell Shock, which I later joined. Like, Shell Shock, guitar player, founding member, committed suicide in 1988. So me and Jimmy started, that's kind of when we really started getting into the Melvins and Carnivore. And we're kind of, Trouble, St. Vitus, all that stuff. Witchfinder General, all of the Sabbath-y type things. And, that was kind of around the time we went from Shell Shock was more of a punk band. By that time, I'd already met Phil, already met Pepper. I was playing with Jim. We started the Slugs, which ended up turning into Crowbar. Probably everybody knows the story about that. But it's just one of them things where we're all just a bunch of young dudes. Jimmy was from the West Bank. Pepper was from Uptown. Phil was from Lakeview. Well, for the most part. I was in River Ridge, just different little areas of town. But, New Orleans is geographically, it's a very small town. We're basically an island, so we're surrounded by water. So we're the exact opposite of, like, out west, where it's just land forever. We're surrounded by water. So geographically, it's a small place, and it's really not that big of a city. But we just met. All going, it was right around the time where the crossover thing started happening, where it was okay to go to hardcore and punk shows if you were a metal guy, and it was okay for the punk and hardcore kids to come to the metal shows. Exactly. I was in a band called Aftershock with Jimmy, which was right after Shell Shock, and we actually opened for the Cro-Mags and Destruction. We're on tour together, so that was a big thrill. I was in like '88, I think, and then right after that was kind of the first song ever written for Crowbar was actually Waiting in Silence, opening track on Obedience to Suffering that me and Jim wrote together, and the rest is history. So.
At the same time, what was the scene like back then? What was the sludge scene back? Was it the same, really? And how were the record labels handling it? Were they really looking for you guys, or was it kind of just an uphill battle?
The scene was great because you actually had, even before, like Pepper at the time was in Graveyard Rodeo before he joined COC. So you had bands like Graveyard Rodeo and and a couple other bands. I'm trying to think offhand, but we had, you had what ended up being Crowbar. You had I Hate God. You had Soylent Green, who were around before even Tommy, who's in and out here, as drummer for. Later on, you had Goat Whore come out of there, and Acid Bath from the Bayou.
Is the guy from Acid Bath and Goat Whore? Is that like a good?
Sammy that played on a couple of Crowbar records, Sammy Douay, was a founding member of Goat Whore. And it was kind of a side band around the time Acid Bath were breaking up. and he got Ben in the band on vocals, who is also in Solar Green. So it's one of them incestuous things.
Everyone just
Everybody's played with everybody at one time or another, or even like we used to get Ben to be our van driver and merchandise guy, for a couple of tours, whatever. But everybody for the most part helps one another out. It's not a competitive type of scene. I'm really not involved with the scene any longer. All I know is you still have Crowbar and I Hate God and Down and whatever Phil's doing, Superjoint, whatever. So the Illegals, whatever he may be doing. Those are the guys closer to my age that I grew up with. So I'm not really involved with this current scene. I'm more of a family guy at home type thing.
for your own influences in guitar, who is your big influence besides Tony? Like who? I'm gonna have to cross him out. Like who really made you go?
I mean, what first got me into guitar was what kid doesn't, that's a music fan, doesn't like the sound of an electric guitar. But Kiss Alive was Ace Frehley, one of them. I'm one of those guys that, I'll be 51, so I was 10 in 1975. So when they really started hitting in like 76, 77, I was 11, 12 years old. I started playing guitar at 13, so it was Ace that really got me. At first I wanted to play bass because of Gene, and then my dad was like, why don't you play guitar, son? And I said, you know what, I think I will.
I tell you, Ace, for whatever people say about him, for despite how big of a crackhead he is the most talented guy in Kiss. Like, I don't care what anyone says.
I do think, Gene's a very underrated bass player. I think him and Paul both sing well, but Ace could there's one thing, like I loved Paul Stanley's book. I really did. I don't know if you have read it or not, but it's an amazing book. You don't even have to be a Kiss fan. It's not even really about Kiss. It's about life. And I really admire him as a man. But one thing, that I don't agree with is, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not trying to misquote Paul, but I think he was saying like, because Ace, drinking problems and whatever, he says he could have been one of the greats. And I'm like, he is one of the greats.
Yeah. You didn't even have to try.
God, believe me, the first 3 records, Kiss Alive, Rock and Roll Over, fucking, Destroyer, of course, those first 6 studio albums and the 2 live albums, and even Dynasty, I think, is a great album.
Dynasty's good.
I mean, that's far.
That was the most popular one. Yeah.
Paul's was very good too.
Gene says his is the best, but it isn't. It's terrible.
It's everything. But that's Gene, and we love him, But I mean, Ace smokes his. I mean, honestly, as a batch of songs, and that has still stood the test of time.
When you joined Down, were you planning on going back to Crowbar, or is Down just going to be a side project?
It started in 1991 absolutely as a side project. Phil still lived in Texas. Pepper lived in North Carolina with COC, doing that. And me and Todd, Jimmy had just moved back from Atlanta because he moved to Atlanta for a short while. He was doing I Hate God. Me and Todd Strange were doing Crowbar. Pep was in COC, Phil was in Pantera. Pantera was really starting to catch around that time. So it was totally a side project. And it took us 4 years to get to doing the NOLA record. And then we did the record. It was magic. It was classic record, no doubt about it. And we did like a short little 2-week tour, and then boom, everybody went back to their own band for a long time. So it was never intended on being anything but a side project, which grew into being a main band for a good long while, really from 2000, like around the end of 2001 when we recorded Down 2 for the most part, until it still is. Well, I won't say a main band necessarily anymore. I don't want to speak for the other guys, but I know Phil's very involved with doing the new Superjoint record right now, touring with Superjoint. Pepper's back with COC. I'll be seeing him in London in a few weeks, so that's cool. Jimmy's full blown with I Hate God, so they're all busy with other stuff. But Down's one of the bands that I'm sure they'll figure it out. I mean, I'm happy where I'm at. And in hindsight, it seems like the right decision between me and the guys in Down for me to separate. I don't if you want to, you can call it either way. I didn't really quit, or I wasn't really kicked out. It was just things weren't working out, and to be honest, our friendship, I run into those guys now, and it's like we're kids again, because we're not in a business together anymore. There's no head, button over disagreeing over shit. It's just hanging out with guys, drinking beer, dudes that I love, that I grew up with, old childhood friends, man. So it's a wonderful thing.